Tune your shortwave radio dial to 4625 kilohertz, and you'll hear an eerie, repetitive noise. This mysterious station goes by the call sign UVB76, but to its devoted listeners, it's known as the buzzer. An enigmatic radio broadcast that no one claims to run has been transmitting a monotonous droning sound like this one, virtually non-stop for over 5 decades. The buzzing is occasionally interrupted by a voice speaking Russian.
Vasily, Zhenya, Tsapli, Khariton. Vasily, Zhenya, Tsapli.
Ryan Schaum, an amateur radio enthusiast, runs one of many websites devoted to the phenomenon.
What originally got me into the buzzer was the mystery of it, like who's broadcasting this, why they are, and what possible purpose could it have. I did kind of get hooked to it, so I just keep on searching for more information about it, hoping to find some sort of rational explanation.
Investigator Chase Klotsky says thousands of dedicated enthusiasts like Ryan are heating up the internet with talk that the buzzer's origin is the former Soviet Union.
We trace it back basically to Russia. Could be anything from the communication device to speak to submarines, or a coded way to speak to spies, their military.
There is another theory that the buzzer is part of a nuclear deterrent system, a so-called dead hand station.
The theory behind the dead man switch is that if Russia is attacked and decimated, the buzzer stops, and then nuclear weapons are automatically deployed in retaliation to the West.
The nuclear dead hand system is part of a long-standing policy called Mutual Assured Destruction, or MAD. If all sides know nuclear war is unwinnable, no one will start one. But is the buzzer really a part of that, or does it have another disturbing purpose? Let's ask the experts. We turn to our military expert, Tim McMillan. He studied the history of the buzzer, and he's skeptical it has anything to do with nukes.
In 2010, the signal ceased. Very fortunately, we didn't see the launch of any missiles. We didn't see apocalypse, and so that would suggest that it's probably not linked to some type of nuclear detonation device.
So, what about the submarine signaling theory?
When I first heard about this buzzer, I thought it must be a way to communicate with submarines deep in the oceans, but that requires very low frequency transmission.
ELF, or extremely low frequency waves, can penetrate seawater hundreds of meters deep. At these frequencies, the signal doesn't degrade much due to atmospheric conditions or the depth of the ocean. But Kaku says the buzzer works at a much higher frequency. So he thinks it's being used to communicate with people on land, but at a great distance.
You might say to yourself, well, why don't the Russians simply use the internet? Well, the problem with that is security. And so you want to use over-the-horizon radio for certain kinds of sensitive communication.
Shortwave radio is phenomenally good at sending messages past the line of sight because these messages actually bounce off the ionosphere and then come back down to Earth. So you could shoot messages across entire continents. These regular intervals of noise, they're basically saturating this shortwave radio channel so other people can't hop on the station and compete with you.
But why do that? Dr. Gottesman says that by claiming the frequency, Russia can use it at any time as a so-called numbers station to send secret messages, often hidden in a group of numbers as they are read out loud.
87, 62.
And McMillan agrees.
It's fairly unsophisticated, but a brilliant way to communicate with your deep cover spies who may be all the way across the world.
Other countries, including the US, have allegedly used so-called numbers stations for espionage. And if it's an old-school form of spycraft, McMillan says it's still useful.
The idea of continuing to use it today, why not? It makes your adversaries have to listen in. It makes them try to crack a code that maybe you're not even using anymore. But it could be something else that we haven't even considered. It's an unknown. Who knows? If nothing else, it's a mystery.
So our verdict is mixed. We're pretty sure it's a Russian number station, but we don't know exactly what sort of messages it's sending, if it's currently in use, or if it's a ruse, or if it's just a placeholder for the frequency. So for now, we're just going to have to keep listening with anticipation for the next big clue. One rumor that continuously makes the rounds on the internet is that some controversial world leaders have been secretly replaced by body doubles. So is the camera just catching these powerful men from odd angles, or has somebody made a switch? It's April 2020, and North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un seems to be missing in action. On April 11th, he presides over a meeting of the North Korean Politburo, but he is conspicuously absent from the annual celebration of his grandfather's birthday just 4 days later on April 15th. As the weeks go by without a public appearance, there are whisperings that he is gravely ill. When photos of him are finally released at the beginning of May, it only intensifies rumors something had happened. The images show Kim inspecting a new fertilizer plant. He appears to be happy and healthy, but some speculate that all is not as it seems. The skeptics question whether the man in the photo is actually Kim Jong-un at all. They point to discrepancies in the man's head shape, nose, ears, and teeth compared to the authenticated photos of Kim in 2019 and 2013 on the right. Many wonder if the leader did in fact pass away and has been replaced by a double. According to journalist Aaron McCarthy, Kim Jong-un isn't the only world leader suspected of being swapped for a decoy.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has often been the subject of rumors that he uses body doubles. It was even rumored that at some point after he became president, he died and was replaced by a lookalike.
Sounds silly, right? But wait, major world leaders have used body doubles before.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has actually admitted to having impersonators who go on the campaign trail for him.
It's also been well established by the Pentagon that Iraq's Saddam Hussein went so far as to make his own body doubles get plastic surgery to add similar identifying marks like moles and scars. But could one of these current leaders have actually been replaced by a double? Time for our experts to face off. First, facial recognition expert Hoan Ton-Tat has his company's algorithm compare the photo in question of the resurfaced Kim Jong-un to an earlier image of the North Korean leader. Again, look at the differences in the teeth and earlobes.
Comparing the two faces, and the lower the number, the better it is. If it's under 1.0, it's a match. This is at 0.73, so the algorithm is very confident that it's the same person. But to make sure, we had an expert facial analyst take a look at the face.
He found several features that were the same, like the outer eye and the lower lip area. But it was a matching crease in the cheek that really sealed the deal.
There are unique things that we don't always notice about someone, like the cheek crease. He has a cheek crease on his right cheek. To have a body double, to have the exact same feature there, would be very, very improbable.
So it's highly unlikely this was a decoy Kim Jong-un in the photo. The analyst also found matching cheek creases on the two photos of Putin, putting to bed rumors he too was replaced by a body double. Mick West says there's a logical reason why these theories of leaders being replaced with lookalikes have persisted online.
Even if you take the same person and you do two photographs in slightly different lighting, they can look like very, very different people.
West demonstrated for us exactly that.
These were taken about 1 minute apart. If you didn't know better, you might think these were actually two different people. The shape of the head becomes very, very different, and the features look a little bit different as well, like they're a little bit more compressed than they were over here.
Our verdict? These theories are false. Though body doubles have been used, we can conclude that there is still only one true Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin. In the wake of the recent California wildfires, a strange and sinister theory emerged from the ashes. The video you're about to see had some folks asking if the terrifying natural destruction we observed was in fact unnatural.
Pretty much total destruction. I've seen every house destroyed on this road.
California wildfires have become a perennial disaster. In the aftermath, aerial footage shows wrenching images of destruction.
Here we see the devastating after effects of what these wildfires are leaving in their wake.
But look closely at this shot. Does something seem off to you?
One of the things that we're seeing that is absolutely crazy are entire houses incinerated, burned to the ground, while trees surrounding them are completely left intact, untouched. The question is, what is causing these wildfires?
Let's zoom in on that. It does seem odd that the trees are standing while the houses are reduced to ash. Journalist MJ Banaya says images like these have prompted some wild explanations that are getting attention online.
According to internet conspiracy theories, there's a secret government program known as Agenda 21, the purpose of which is to force people to relocate into major cities. And then, as the conspiracy theory goes, the government can then exercise more control over the population.
And how is this allegedly being accomplished? Forest fires and laser guns.
The theory is that the US government was using direct energy weapons to purposefully start these forest fires to clear out towns or for some other nefarious reason.
Laser weapons are much more than staples of science fiction. During the Cold War, the US and USSR poured resources into orbital space weapons, even deploying some. The so-called Star Wars missile defense system was the most famous, but perhaps the most intriguing was the Air Force's YAL-1, which featured a laser system mounted in a turret on a plane's nose. And that's just the technology we know about. As you know, the US military did just launch Space Force. But could the government really be using secret energy weapons to start fires and control society? We turn to our military expert, Tim McMillan, for an explanation.
The idea of directed energy weapons. It's very exciting. I mean, we've heard about that since Star Trek.
Tim says it's true that the major space powers are all developing energy weapons to take out each other's satellites. But striking the Earth's surface?
That is something that's very difficult to achieve and not technically, that we know of, achievable. Whenever the laser is being projected down, it's got to travel through the atmosphere, clouds. Any one of these factors are going to cause what's called atmospheric blooming. And by the time it reaches Earth, it's not going to have the amount of energy to start a fire and burn something.
So if a laser weapon is not possible, then what can account for the strange aftermath footage? Science writer Mick West, who lives in wildfire country, says it's simple. Houses burn much easier than trees.
It's actually quite hard to burn green wood.
To demonstrate, West decides to do his own test.
I went into my attic and I got a piece of scrap wood. Then I went out into the field behind my house and I cut down a branch of a tree. And then I took both of these pieces of wood and I put them in my fire and I built identical piles of kindling under each one. And then I lit them both at the same time. The wood from my attic caught fire and burned partway through. The wood that I just cut from a tree just got a bit black on the outside, just got a bit sooty, even though they had the exact same small fires underneath, which shows that green wood doesn't burn, but the wood in your house does.
In fact, the average live tree is about 50% water by weight. And while theories about directed energy weapons aren't going to go away anytime soon, that fact leads us to our unequivocal verdict. These fires are natural phenomena. Are audio waves secretly being used as weapons? That's the question a growing group of American diplomats, spies, and government employees are asking after falling ill in Cuba and elsewhere. They believe they are victims of covert attacks perpetrated by unknown assailants using unknown technology. In late 2016, several diplomats and other employees stationed at the U.S. Embassy in Havana, Cuba, report feeling ill after hearing a strange, high-pitched noise. According to the Associated Press, this recording could be that noise. The sound is a high-pitched whine that seems to undulate, even writhe, which produces a nails-on-the-chalkboard effect. Similar attacks are later reported by U.S. officials in China, Austria, and Russia. Mark Polymeropoulos, a senior CIA official, believes he was targeted one night while on official business in Moscow.
This was by far the most terrifying experience. The room was spinning. I couldn't stand up without falling down. I felt nauseous. I had an incredible case of tinnitus, ringing in my ears, a headache, so I knew something was seriously wrong.
The sudden onset of peculiar side effects baffles U.S. officials. Studies later show the injuries resemble a concussion, but with no signs of impact.
Not only were we subject to an attack, but I think it's still ongoing. And that poses a lot of serious questions for the U.S. government.
What was believed was going on at the time was diplomats were believing they were attacked by some sort of sonic weapon. Eventually, this is named Havana Syndrome.
If the Havana Syndrome is caused by some sort of sonic weapon, it wouldn't be the first time that sound has been weaponized.
This is something that goes far back in a more rudimentary form, using blaring loud music in different war zones. Now, as technology has advanced, there's been a lot of different hypothetical and actual practical operational platforms that use sound as a weapon.
The sonic weapon most commonly deployed today is the long-range acoustic device, which has been recently used by police departments to break up major protests and riots.
The LRAD system was designed for crowd dispersal in a non-lethal way.
These kind of weapons are only advancing, but sound is being weaponized more and more.
So folks, this is scary stuff and very real. What is that sound? Recorded in Havana. Did it make U.S. personnel sick? Or was there some other weapon or force responsible? Let's ask our experts. Is the sound a recording of a sonic weapon? We asked our audio expert, Dr. Ben Gottesman.
You can see most of the energy is concentrated between 2 and 3 kilohertz. This is a really sensitive spot when it comes to human hearing. It's why baby cries grab our attention so much. Whereas in the sound released by the Associated Press, we see that the frequency range is much higher, between 6 and 8 kilohertz. And so the frequency ranges of these two sounds do not line up.
But could this sound be some other sonic weapon? Gottesman has his doubts.
And I've worked in some tropical locations, and there were times where I would hear very similar piercing calls. This sound is produced by a species of tropical cricket called the Indies short-tailed cricket. As you can see, the frequency range is a perfect overlap, and it also has similar harmonic characteristics. So I'm saying that it is a really clean match.
So the sound is just chirping crickets, coincidentally recorded at the moment people were getting sick. So, could Havana Syndrome have been caused by a different kind of weapon, one people can't hear?
In the medical studies that have been done, including the National Academy of Sciences report, a microwave weapon is the leading culprit right now. And that's based on the injuries that have been observed in different patients.
Way back in 1962, an American scientist, Alan Fry, suggested a microwave weapon could be used to raise the temperature inside a person's ear by 1/millionth of a degree. That would be enough to cause a victim to feel dizzy, nauseous, or experience pressure in their heads. And get this, Fry later lectured on the topic to the Soviet Academy of Sciences in Moscow. So could the Russians be behind some new technology?
While the injuries are consistent with exposure to microwave weapons, it's important to know that these type of weapons are unknown to exist. So frankly, it really is a mystery. There's enough physical and medical evidence that it does appear to be a weapon, but what is causing it is truly an unknown. It's a real concern.
It's a split decision. Our verdict, the sound that was alleged to have caused the Havana Syndrome is an Indies short-tailed cricket, coincidentally making that noise at the same time as the attack. But Havana Syndrome itself is still an unexplained phenomenon. More than 130 U.S. officials have now been stricken. Recent incidents have even involved White House officials in our own nation's capital.